Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his brow as he guided the hoverplow through the amber grain fields of New Harvest. The twin suns of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the rolling hills, and the familiar hum of agricultural machinery filled the air. At 19, he had known nothing but the rhythm of seasons, the smell of earth, and the simple satisfaction of feeding the colony. That was before he found the artifact. It had been buried 3 meters deep in the south field, revealed only when a particularly stubborn boulder needed excavating. The object was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. A crystalline structure the size of his fist, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to respond to his touch. The moment his fingers made contact, the world changed forever. Heir of the forbidden line. The voice had whispered directly into his mind, speaking in a language he somehow understood, despite never hearing it before. The time of awakening has come. Now, 6 months later, Marcus stood before the Galactic Council on the capital world of Prima Sanctum, surrounded by beings whose civilizations spanned millennia. The Zephyrian delegates towered above him on their 6 legs, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the chamber's lights. The ethereal luminari floated in their containment fields, their plasma-based forms shifting like living aurora. Ancient keepers older than human civilization itself, observed from their raised platforms with eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of stars. "You claim," spoke Chancellor Vex Thule, the Zephyrian leader, "that this human possesses the bloodline we have spent 10,000 years ensuring remained extinct." Ambassador Sarah Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, stepped forward from the human delegation. "The artifact has confirmed it through genetic resonance. Marcus carries markers that match the architect genome." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. The architects had been the galaxy's first spacefaring civilization, the ones who had built the hyperspace gates, established the quantum communication networks, and laid the foundation for interstellar society. They had also been the most dangerous beings the galaxy had ever known. "The architects were purged for good reason," rumbled Elder Thon of the Keepers, his voice like grinding stone. "Their technology could reshape reality itself. Their descendants were hunted to extinction to prevent another catastrophe." Marcus felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon him. 6 months ago, his greatest concern had been whether the rains would come in time for harvest. Now he was apparently the last living remnant of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. "I didn't ask for this," Marcus said, his voice carrying further than it should have in the vast chamber. The artifact, now integrated into a pendant around his neck, pulsed gently. "I was just trying to live my life, grow crops, help my community. But the relic, it showed me things." He closed his eyes, and suddenly the council chamber was filled with holographic images, not projected by any device, but manifested by his very thoughts. The assembled delegates gasped as they witnessed the rise and fall of the architect civilization, their incredible achievements, their fatal hubris, and the war that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. "They weren't evil," Marcus continued, opening his eyes. "They were brilliant, but they lost sight of why they were building. They became so focused on what they could create that they forgot about those they were supposed to serve." A young luminary delegate, her plasma form flickering with curiosity, drifted closer. "But you're different." The resonance patterns were detecting. "They're not like the old architect signatures." Marcus nodded. "I've been thinking about that. Maybe that's because I wasn't raised in their civilization. I grew up on a farm, learned the value of patience, of working with nature instead of forcing it to bend. The artifact calls me the heir of the forbidden line, but I think it means something different than you all fear." He reached into his jacket and produced a small device, crude-looking compared to the sleek technology surrounding him, but unmistakably architect in origin. He had built it 3 weeks ago using knowledge that had somehow emerged from deep within his genetic memory. "This is a soil regenerator," Marcus said simply. "It can restore dead earth to fertility in hours instead of decades. I've been testing it on the burned wastelands left over from the colony's early terraforming mistakes." The chamber fell silent. Chancellor Vex Thule leaned forward. You created architect-level technology. For farming? For helping, Marcus corrected. The knowledge is there, all of it. I can see how to build weapons that could crack planets, how to manipulate time itself, how to reach into other dimensions. But I also know what happens when power like that gets used without wisdom. My people have a saying, the best fertilizer is the farmer's footsteps. You can't grow anything good if you're not willing to do the work yourself, to stay close to what matters. Elder Thon's ancient eyes narrowed. And what would you do with this heritage, young human? What would you build? Marcus smiled, thinking of the fields back home, of the neighbors who had helped raise him, of the simple joy he felt watching things grow. I'd like to build a future where no one goes hungry, where dead worlds can bloom again, where the mistakes of the past become the wisdom of tomorrow. He held up the soil regenerator. This is just the beginning, but I won't do it alone, and I won't do it in secret. The architects fell because they isolated themselves, thought they knew better than everyone else. If you'll let me, I'd like to share this knowledge. All of it. Let every species contribute their wisdom, their perspective, their values. The luminary delegate pulsed brighter. A collective approach to architect technology, guided by diverse, ethical frameworks. With built-in safeguards and transparency, added Ambassador Chen, catching on to the implications. Chancellor Vexathul was quiet for a long moment. Finally he spoke. You would give away the greatest power in the galaxy? I'd share it, Marcus said firmly. There's a difference. And I'd start with the simple things, healing soil, purifying water, growing food. Let's make sure everyone has what they need to live before we worry about reaching for the stars. The vote, when it came, was closer than Marcus had expected. But in the end, the Galactic Council chose hope over fear. They established the Architect Heritage Project, with Marcus as its human coordinator and representatives from every major civilization providing oversight. A year later, Marcus stood once again in his family's fields on New Harvest. The soil regenerator had worked beyond all expectations, and the harvest stretched to the horizon in golden waves. But now, he wasn't alone. Zephyrian agricultural specialists worked alongside keeper botanists and luminary atmospheric engineers, all contributing their expertise to the growing project. The artifact around his neck pulsed gently as he watched the sunset. Somewhere in that crystalline structure, the accumulated knowledge of the architects waited patiently, but Marcus was no longer afraid of it. He had learned the most important lesson his heritage had to offer. True power wasn't in the ability to create or destroy, it was in choosing to build something that would outlast yourself. After all, he was still just a farm boy. He simply had better tools now, and better friends to help him use them wisely.